Hi there, my name is James Chari, and I'm here to talk to you about a subject that people don't normally talk about. Statistics has it that almost every 2 minutes in South Africa, a family is losing a loved one. And this happens in various ways. But one thing is to be noted. When the remains of the loved one are handed over to the family or to a funeral parlor, at times they are not in such a good condition for viewing. At times the remains of the loved one are discovered after a very long time of death. This leads to a need for someone who can make sure that these remains are put into a state where the loved ones can view them. That's where we call in the embalmer. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you about embalming theory. The first thing that I'm going to look at is what is embalming. The second thing that I'm going to look at is the legislation that guides the practice of embalming. The third thing that I'll look at is where did embalming come from, the history of embalming. The fourth thing that I'm going to look at is the various methods that are at the exposition of the embalmer. I'm also going to look at the reasons for embalming, the ethics that guide the embalmers, the embalming administration, and then I'll conclude. The term embalming means the art and science of treating human remains with preservatives in order to try and curb the process of decomposition. And this is done by using antiseptics and preservatives to prevent the putrefaction. What happens when the human remains are treated with these embalming chemicals is proteins are coagulated, tissues are fixed, organs are bleached, and they are hardened. Blood is coagulated and it is turned into a pinkish mass. Now, when we look at the legislation that guides embalming, we know that in general the funeral parlor industry is guided by many legislations that could be national legislation or municipal bylaws. And just to give a highlight, one of the acts that mainly guides the funeral parlor industry is the National Health Act of 2003, the Regulation for the Management of Human Remains of 2013, and various municipal bylaws. These will be looked at in detail in another lecture. For now, if we go to look at the history of embalming, embalming started mainly in Egypt, in ancient Egypt. And the main reason at that period, which is way back in 3,200 years before Christ, was for religious reasons. Egyptians believed at that time that the body needed to be preserved in order for it to await resurrection. The second period through the development of embalming is a period known as the anatomical period. This period is mainly characterized with the embalming of human remains to try and preserve them for dissection to gain more understanding of the functioning of human remains for health reasons. The third and final period, which is the current period called the modern period, is a period where embalming is now being done mainly by funeral parlors for burial. When we look at the methods that are at the disposition of the embalmer, we've got two main groups of methods of embalming. The first class is the artificial means of embalming. Examples are using simple heat, using powders, using evisceration and immersion, using evisceration and drying. But modernly right now, the most common and the most popular ones are arterial injection as well as cavity treatment. Then when we look at the natural means of embalming, we look at freezing, we look at dry cold, we look at dry heat, and using natural soils to preserve the human remains. Now, when I started, I said we are also going to look at some of the reasons for